Hello and welcome to the 2020 return of No Man's Podcast. It's still No Man's Land. It's still this podcast. I'm Mike.
And I'm Vincent.
So we are still trudging along through No Man's Land Volume 3. And we got 3 issues today, but one two-parter and one one-off. We're going to start with Azrael number, 58?
Yeah.
Azrael number 58, written by Dennis O'Neil and Roger Robinson. So our standard team of Azrael, nothing different here. And we open up with Azrael just beating up a bunch of thieves, like stealing medical supplies from Dr. Leslie Tompkins. And he doesn't want to do it, but as he goes back to the medical center, he's got a conversation with Dr. Tompkins again, who is still pushing him to find solutions without resorting to violence. And like there's this thing of like she's talking to him, so it's like, well, all you've ever known is violence, so maybe that's just how you're wired. But she does tell him that, hey, even though I don't like you punching people, you have been a big help to the clinic. So that kind of makes him feel a little bit good. So while he's walking around, he spies what he thinks is a thief stealing stuff, and he tackles on the ground. It turns out to be his friend Mitzi. I have no idea where Mitzi is from. Do you know where Mitzi's from? I'm guessing earlier in the run.
Yeah, but I mean, if she's in, I feel like we did read this. I don't think it's something from before No Man's Land.
I thought it might have been like didn't he save a daughter and mother earlier in the run? Like on the building when he was fighting that like amygdala looking guy that wasn't amygdala. I thought maybe it was her, but I don't think it is.
Maybe. And the girl's boyfriend was eaten by the dude.
Yeah.
I think it might be them, but they're a little toned down because if I recall, the mother was like a crazy like mob boss type or something.
Yeah. Well, speaking of crazy mothers, we do stick with that. So Mitzi informs John Paul that her mother is trapped in the gasworks and asks Azrael to save her. And he says yes. Also, Mitzi tells Jean Paul that he looks cute without his mask, which is a first for him, as no woman has ever told him that before.
I can relate.
I mean, that's because you only wear a mask, right? That's not your face?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Azrael he goes out to save the Monmouth Gasworks, and the rest of this issue becomes like this weird like hallucination dream because Azrael hasn't slept for 3 days. He's exhausted. So he sees like the Order of Saint Dumas, which is just Saint Dumas, like kind of casting him out, and then also he's got visions of Batman, which leads him into the gasworks, and he just kind of ends up saving the mother and returns the mother to Mitzi. And he's in this rowboat, and he's like, hey, I could leave Gotham all right now. It wouldn't be that bad. And then at the end of it, he's like, nah, I'm not going to leave. I'm going to give the boat to them. And so Mitzi and her mother go to that, and Azrael returns to the Dr. Tompkins clinic, and we cut back to Mitzi and her mother on the rowboat, where her mom exclaims that Jerry, who's Mitzi's crazy uncle, is still out there, and that's why she was in the gasworks in the first place. She was having visions of their uncle who was supposed to be dead. It was a very kind of weird issue. I felt like inconsistent across the board. It was like it almost felt like, well, we got to fill 20 pages with something, and that's what they did. That's like that whole hallucination is just like the bulk middle of the book, and it doesn't really add anything. I felt, but I mean, it's not bad, but like this is definitely one of the weaker issues of Azrael we've read. But Roger Robinson's pencils still continue to be a delight to look at in the series.
Yeah, this one's particularly strange because it's both part of No Man's Land and a Day of Judgment tie-in. So it is these, yeah, because in the trade they don't really have the covers very well. But the cover for this issue has 2 banners. It has the No Man's Land banner on the left side and a Day of Judgment banner up top. It's just this ugly monstrosity double tie-in. And I haven't read any other Day of Judgment tie-ins recently, so I'm not sure like the pattern that most of them follow. It may be that a lot of them are vision type things, because I can't even necessarily tell you how this connects to that. Besides, there's like vaguely supernatural stuff involved, but it's portrayed more as a vision or like a hallucination. than an actual like ghost appearance.
Right.
So these two events, of course, one is just Batman centric, and one of them is kind of line wide. They're overlapping. The TLDR for Day of Judgment is that Etrigan is trying to be tricky. He's up to some shenanigans and accidentally releases demons on Earth while trying to manipulate who the new host for the Spectre will be. And so a bunch of magic characters have to team up against all the chaos going on. And
they do not have. Sorry to interrupt. They do not in the trade. They do not have the overlays.
Yeah,
which is annoying. The other issues in the previous books did have the banners on them.
Yeah, there's some inconsistencies in those books, as we've discussed, and of course that's DC's second attempt at it. And then, of course, the major ramification of Day of Judgment is that Hal Jordan becomes the new Spectre.
That's right.
And then eventually, Green Lantern Rebirth and Day of Vengeance for Infinite Crisis pick up a lot of those threads. And I don't think Azrael has to do with any of it whatsoever.
It's weird that, like, I've read Day of Judgment. I just felt like it happens later on. Like, I always feel like that's like 2004.
Well, because, like, besides Hal Jordan becoming the Spectre, which of course DC's never reprinted that run, and he didn't, as far as I know, he didn't have any like huge guest appearances in other runs. Besides, like,
I think he had a few guest appearances in Justice League, where like him and Batman shake hands or something.
And obviously, he showed up every once in a while in Green Lantern. But
yeah,
that Spectre run has never been collected. So, and a lot of the things that you think would have came out of Day of Judgment come out of Day of Vengeance. So I feel like it's a kind of discarded event because like all the magic characters teamed up in Day of Judgment, but it's not until like 5 years later that out of Day of Vengeance you get the Shadow Pact, and you get past that point, then you get another Spectre, and that's when Christmas Allen becomes the Spectre. You get other things actually coming out of that event, where Day of Judgment, it's just the Spectre.
Right.
And of course, Rebirth, Green Lantern Rebirth heavily discarded or quickly got rid of or explained away a lot of the Hal Jordan stuff from the 90s through early 2000s.
Right.
All right, the next arc, this is the bulk of this episode, called Goin Downtown. And we're starting in Batman 571. This arc is written by Chuck Dixon, drawn by Matt Broom, who I think Matt Broom did some minor stuff in like the X-Men stuff. I feel like I want to say he did some X-Force, but like maybe fill-ins. I can't tell you what his signature thing is. I quickly Googled him. Some of our reviewers may or may not know that a major comic book database recently shuttered its doors. So it's a little bit more complicated for me to quickly look up some things like that. And I didn't feel like digging too deeply for something somewhat minor. But I believe he successfully transitioned into like video game concept art. He's worked on a bunch of MMOs.
I've recognized his name from places. That's the thing. Like, I've seen his art before. I would say, though, his art for this particular arc kind of fits into the wheelhouse of what Mike Deodato was doing, especially with his look on Bane here. It kind of falls in line with the way the standard just Batman title has been so far, kind of with the rotating art team. It has been, but I'd say it's in line from what we've seen.
Yeah, I'll talk about the art a little bit more while we're at it. I actually liked it. I mean,
I like it.
It doesn't stand out, but I think it's pretty good. He does an exaggerated Bane, but it's also not like super exaggerated to the point where he has like humongous veins, like reaching out of his arms 3 inches. But he's still like huge and top heavy. And his Batman and Robin are all right. I thought my one like character nitpick is I didn't really like his Penguin that much.
Yeah, this thing was all right. I thought that there's some. I feel like I'm going to keep bringing this up as we go on. There's some early digital coloring kind of flatness to it in places. I think it scenes at night with dark colors like purples, blues, blacks. That's where you can kind of see, at least from my eyes, when I know it's an early digital book, there's like a weird flatness to it. When you're looking at the coloring, it's almost like when I'm at work looking at a camera before you color correct something, and you're just looking at the raw footage. It doesn't look like it's fully colored right, but that's early coloring for you.
So here we open with Bane, and he runs across these three like looter types or three people sticking together, and he kills two dudes and keeps the woman alive because she will serve the least resistance, and initially uses her to test booby traps, and she survives, and so then he basically uses her as a mule for the rest of the arc. Has her carry around weapons and ammo and stuff like that. Because what he finds in a vault is a stockpile. We don't like 100% see what the hell it is, but it's just guns and stuff because he pulls out a giant gun and then she lugs a case around. And it's set up that the vault is owned or set up by the anonymous benefactor that Bane has been communicating with. And they run into some gang members and he guns them down, and he leaves some calling cards, and they're aces of spades, and so it's supposed to tip people off that, oh, it's Two-Face. He's trying to pull strings. And then this first issue connects back to Batman and Robin. They stop a moonshine operation, which I think is very interesting because principally because the moonshine is apparently making people go blind.
I was gonna say, there's a great line of Batman yelling at the guy, going, "Stop making people go blind," and it kind of made me laugh.
But then Penguin calls on them, and they basically compare notes, which is different from, I feel like literally like the first three arcs in a row of No Man's Land was Batman coming to interrogate Penguin over and over again.
Just punching him in the nose.
Yeah. And now we kind of have the other way around where they've kind of sort of settled into their uneasy alliance. And so Penguin's like, hey, I got an idea on this, calls them in, and is like, hey, don't punch me. And it basically takes Penguin having a map out for Batman to figure out what's going on, but it's not like he knows who. And it turns out that Bane's plan is to blow the Hall of Records, which we saw completely teased that he was going to do it in a previous arc. But of course, a lot of these arcs are running simultaneously. Do you have any quick notes on the first issue?
No, I will say though, I think this whole arc, because it's 2 issues, moves very, very fast to the point where like it is jumping scene to scene to scene to scene, and it's a little bit too rapid. To the point where it's a little bit hard to follow along. There's some panel layouts here that were tripping me up a little bit, especially like the first beginning stuff with Bane, where he's talking to the girl that he captures. I was like, is it one of those ones, because it's a double page splash? I'm like, is this one where I go left to right always across, or left to right down and then back up? I thought those were a little odd, the way they paced some pages, and I think everything moved pretty rapidly. But like, I don't think this is the strongest work from Chuck Dixon. I think this whole arc is a little phoned in, but it is fun because we got Bane lugging around a giant machine gun, which is fun to watch, which is, fully unleashed in the next issue.
Yeah. I mean, especially obviously it's Dixon doing Bane, and we are sort of, even though it's not on the page for us yet, we know that we are sort of moving the plot along.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see, but again, it doesn't stand out. Part 2 in Detective 738, we open with basically all these gang members sieging City Hall where Two-Face is holed up, because they all think that Two-Face is pulling these hits, which Bane is setting up. And Batman and Robin literally see Bane like creeping around, like, or maybe less than 20 feet away from them. And they have different plans. They're going to try and save Two-Face instead of stop Bane first. And this is where this arc kind of stumbles for me because we get the same dialogue twice.
Right.
And it's not recap. Like they're in a different location. It's a different point in time. It's not simply redoing moments from different angles. Because in the end of last issue, Bane explains to his partner, who I don't think we ever got a name for, doesn't really matter. He explained to her that he's going to blow up the Hall of Records, and and literally like the same lines. She's like, something something library. She pronounces the library wrong, and then they have the exact same, pretty much the exact same conversation here, but they're already in the building, and it's pretty clunky. I mean, I guess if these came out like a week after each other or something, like it's not a huge deal, but especially when you're reading back to back, it's very glaring.
Yeah.
And I'm not one to get annoyed by recaps in general, if they're handled well, but this was not done well. And basically, Batman and Robin save Two-Face in the chaos, and he's about to be hanged. He gets pretty damn close to it, too. And Robin cuts him free. Two-Face runs away quickly, gets away. Bane sets up a bunch of mini nukes, which he had, in which this woman was carrying around the whole time. I don't really know how those work, but they go off.
Yeah, like whatever.
So several mini nukes go off in the middle of Gotham. I'm not sure if they'll ever, if there's any ramification for that down the line. That would be interesting, I suppose. And Bane spares the woman as well. As long as he tells her, you got to go tell everyone, like, hey, Bane's up to some shit, I guess. And also by direction of some mysterious person. And that's basically how it ends. Like Batman and Robin kind of just, like, they ultimately don't play a huge role in this. They just save Two-Face. And Two-Face gets away, Bane gets away, blows up the records, and we don't entirely know how. And Batman, in the end, back to his detective thing, which we saw a little bit with Penguin, he figures out that Bane is working for someone and something's going on. But he really has no idea, at least that we see teased on this final page.
Right. It's the whole hope is that, okay, Bane blew up the Hall of Records. Why would Bane want to do that? Well, I know someone is paying Bane to do this. So let me stop and look at the big picture. Why would Bane do X? Because Y is paying him, kind of deal. Which, okay, I do like. It's one of the first times we've seen Batman and Robin work together, and Dixon's very good at that, especially being like the first big writer on Tim Drake with the solo series. So I think we've highlighted that before, though. But yeah, Chuck Dixon having a Batman and Robin team up is very welcome to see, because haven't seen them work together a lot yet. So now that the whole gang is back, we're kind of, I think, very slowly getting more organized team ups here. I think we have another Robin and Nightwing team up coming later when I was flipping through the book, maybe. But nice to see more integration of the Bat family wide and not just like sticking to one straight character. I appreciate that. But overall, I think this arc is it's a building arc above anything else, because it looks like, at least in the planning phases, okay, Bane is the end game for how many months now at this point. We'll see where that picks up after that. And I believe I think we're waiting for it to be revealed that it's Lex. But even though we kind of have been hinted at because we've seen Mercy Graves pop up, but we're waiting for the big rabbit out of the hat moment, which we're just not there yet.
Yep. And we are nearing the end, but also, as I've discussed on some of the previous episodes, we've entered a period where several arcs are going to be 2 issues, like this one, even though we threw in the Azrael. So we'll have a bunch of shorter episodes and moving along on them. Maybe do doubles. We will determine.
Like that Clone Saga, when we had like the 2, we do 4 issues, but 2 issues each for one story.
Yeah. So the next episode should be somewhat interesting because it stars Mackenzie Bach. from the GCPD, which we kind of got Montoya solo stories, and we kind of got one or two Bullock solo stories, but this will be interesting. And it's basically just him helping out civilians, as far as I know.
Seems pretty cool.
Batman will be involved somehow, I believe, at least in one of these issues. So that'll be an interesting kind of detour. And then directly following that are two Nightwing issues. So we might do those not in the same episode, but back to back. So you may have both of those.
Right.
I would say overall, this episode for me was like a B plus. I mean, Azrael was totally pointless.
I'm gonna go just because a lot moved forward, and the Azrael issue was kind of head scratchy. I'm gonna go C plus.
Mm-hmm. Yep, not a standout, not a stinker, as far as I'm concerned.
But hey, C's get degrees, right?
Yeah. All right, thanks for watching this episode, and tune in next time we do one. Bye bye.